Hi, I'm Bonnie Burkert, and this is Truth Be Told Transformation, bringing you tools for transformation to live your highest life and to discover what your truth is. Today, I have invited a fascinating woman named Sarah K. Grace to the studios of Truth Be Told here in Burbank. Welcome, Sarah.
Hi, Bonnie. Thank you for having me.
I started to read your book, Journey into Grace. I've got it right here. And unfortunately, I only got through, the first of many crazy chapters in your life. And what did I say to you, Sarah? There was a phone call that ensued shortly after probably being 1/4 of the way through the book. What did I refer to you as?
Said, girl, you were a hot mess.
Sarah, how did you get from you'll tell us some of these stories, but how did you get from some really dark places into lassoing your psychic abilities and then parlaying that into a career as a paramedic?
As a paramedic.
Yes.
Well, it's definitely been a long road.
Yes.
So I've been able to see, hear, and feel energy outside of the normal senses since I was 7. I was raised in the middle of nowhere in South Dakota, pre-internet. So I couldn't just Google,
what's going on with me?
What's going on? Why am I seeing dead people? Why do I see colors around people? Why do I see disease process in people's bodies? I didn't have any semblance of understanding. It just happened. And so when I originally began to talk to my family about it, it was a pretty conservative, old school conservative family. And so unfortunately, I got a lot of the hellfire and brimstone. Don't talk about this, a lot of shame and threatening to send me to a loony bin. So when I was 7 and I finally came out for some help and support and I was met with that, I really tried to diminish or just suck it back in, and I really developed a sense of toxic shame at that point as a result, because I was scared. I was like, I just wanted to be normal like everybody else. I wanted to fit in, and not understanding why I could perceive this energy if other people couldn't, I really thought that there was something wrong. So for me, that in addition to a very turbulent upbringing and childhood, I didn't have a lot of nuclear family stability or support either. So between those two, I was really navigating a lot, not just my own toxic shame, but just trying to figure out how to navigate and process this much stimulus. So I floundered, went kind of off the rails in my late teens, early 20s. And for me, I was trying to cope, doing the best I could. So for me, that was drugs and alcohol. And I really went kind of down a spiral and ultimately overdosed and had my own near-death experience. And during the near-death experience, there was a very familiar female voice, and she was like, it was a lot more eloquent than I'm going to say it, but she was pretty much like, we get it's hard, we get it's hard, we get it's a lot, but should you choose to come back and utilize these abilities, you're actually going to be able to help a lot of people. And so obviously I'm here, so I made the choice to come back. And it's so funny because I just kind of assumed at that point, like, all right, I'm choosing to live, I'm choosing to come back embodied. And so I thought that it would all be laid out for me. Like Spirit would just be like, okay, this is what you do now, but it wasn't that way. I still had to pull myself up by my bootstraps. I had to clean my life up. I had to face my own trauma, my shame, my addictions. And then eventually, once I had stabilized, I became a paramedic. And so I've now been a licensed paramedic for 20 years. I ran 911 calls for 15 years, and we can talk more in depth about different calls and different areas and stuff like that if you want. But on the 911 calls, what ended up happening, and again, it was nothing I was trying to do, it was just happening, was I became the paramedic who was always there for death and extreme crises. And the energetics of a scene, I began to notice. Essentially, it's like organized symphony in the middle of crises or chaos. But I could actually watch how the chakra systems would release from the body and watch the soul exit out the crown of the head as we'd be doing CPR. And I would watch the deceased loved ones come in to greet the patient, and I would watch them transition, the whole time we'd be
Incredible.
running the protocol.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of a roundabout, but it catches you up in terms of like how I ultimately got into the profession.
Yeah, no, okay, that's great. And your book, it's the story of your life here. It's great because it intertwines
Interweaves, yeah.
interweaves. Thank you. Current day, the stories as a paramedic, and then going back into your childhood and things like that. So I wanted to. We were talking about I titled the show "Trauma Recovery," and I just thought I would ask you. I mean, with this experience and seeing people that have transitioned, but then how do you work with people current day? Now, how does that inform how to work with people now?
That's an awesome question. And to me, so ultimately, I ran 911 calls for 15 years. I'm still a licensed paramedic. I still teach paramedic school, but I have my own private practice now. And ultimately, what I do is a lot of psychic surgery. And so what that means is it's kind of like energy work on steroids, but it's a very specialized field, if you will. So I've studied Reiki, shamanism, medical intuition, mediumship. There's a lot of different ways that, to hone the skills and have an understanding of the energetics and energy work. But, if we just look at humanity, I love my background as a paramedic because, and I'm so grateful now for everything that I went through, because having a firsthand account and firsthand lived experience of addiction, depression, like destabilization, shame, all of the coping strategies that we typically do as humans, we're all doing the best we can, and we're all just trying to get by doing the best we can. So having lived the firsthand account, one, made me a better paramedic, and then having all these 911 calls under my belt for all of these years, it makes me a better healer because, again, I'm able to just talk to anybody, meet them where they're at, no judgment, and then what we can do is work on the finding where the trauma is lodged in the body, addressing what coping mechanisms they're actually navigating, kind of, see where they're at in terms of their own giftedness, if you will, and will to live. At this point, there's a lot of people struggling with that, meet them where they are and just,
That's great. I hadn't really put two and two together that way. As far as you being on 911 calls with people who are in complete duress, and how you're really having to listen carefully. Now, you're obviously listening on a lot of different levels. But that's beautiful, and I love that is a way that you're working with people now. Okay, so one of the other ways we titled the show was psychic empowerment.
Yes.
So obviously you had to figure out your own.
I did.
I think we're all born psychic with these intuitive abilities. But then how do you refine it? How do you figure out what's going to be your area that you can best excel in?
Again, another awesome question. So here I was growing up thinking I was this total weirdo, right? Like spent 25 years in the closet and did all kinds of crazy things as a result. And now, come to find out, all of these years later, I heard a figure. It's 15 to 20% of the world's population are ultra sensitive or have high sense perception. So yes, everybody has psychic and intuitive abilities. And then it's almost like the autistic spectrum. Okay. That's kind of what I've come to understand. So if you think 15 to 20% of the world's population, that's like 1.6 billion of us, just roughly 55 million in the U.S. alone. And when I heard that, I was like, oh, why didn't somebody tell me that? I thought I was this lone weirdo, right?
Pre-internet. Well, that's why we do a show like this, is to let people know that if you have those inklings or visions, the senses, again, our sixth sense, you're not crazy, and there's help for you. You can certainly talk to Sarah Kay here for one, but there's different ways you can refine that skill. We need it. This world needs it. It will help you get through, even though for you, and this is in the book, it's very challenging. I mean, you talk about going into some dark places. Like, for example, Well, there was that time, that you were working in the gentleman's club and in Minneapolis.
Yes, I
and
was crazy girl.
and there were some crazy things that you were seeing energetically. I mean, you can imagine the crazy stuff that was happening in general, but then energetically, and how that maybe didn't push you to the brink. So perhaps, I mean, how do you reconcile when you see darkness like that?
I understand now that light and dark are relatively synonymous. It's just two sides of the coin. And so I used to be afraid, not only of my own shadow or darkness, but of other people's or of the vision that I would see. And I hear that a lot in the spiritual community and in a lot of times in clients. Clients want to open to their abilities, but they might be scared of not having control, or they're scared of what they see, or scared of what they feel. And so if we understand this as a dualistic paradigm with high, low, light, dark, masculine, feminine, it's paradoxical, dualistic. So even the densest of all vibrations, the darkest of all vibrations in this dimension always has the equal and opposite resonance available at all times. Otherwise, it could not exist. So when I started to understand, and I had spent so much time feeling so bombarded and so really victimized and traumatized by the stimulus, because for me, it's pretty full on. It's almost like being on acid in Times Square, like 24/7. And it's just a lot of data. And what that does is it overstimulates somebody's nervous system. And when the nervous system gets overstimulated, then all of the different body systems become dysregulated. Okay. And so when you asked that great question about how do you lean into your own ability, first I would advocate that you start first where you are. Okay. And what is your predominant ability? What is your predominant most on the spectrum? If we think of the 1.6 billion roughly on the spectrum, the bulk are empathic. So they feel very deeply. They can sense. And there's a lot of those guys that are struggling right now, especially with GI issues, endocrine issues, insomnia, anxiety, panic attacks, because their nervous systems are
And
dysregulated.
perhaps heart as well.
Heart too.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because it's like being electrocuted. If you don't understand what it is, that we are all fingers on a hand, and you have your own individual experience, but we're all interconnected, and collectively the energy of the past couple of years has been so heavy, so chaotic.
I wanted to ask you, where you thought we are at since 2020, and a lot has happened.
Yes. I'll go into that more in depth, and just wrapping back around in terms of how we navigate darkness is to not be afraid of it, to understand that it is an aspect, and we all have both the light and the dark, the masculine and feminine. The more willing we are to go within and face our own fears, our own traumas, our own addictive patterns, our own, sabotage patterns, those things that are so ingrained in the human condition, the more willing we are to go down and into our own experience, then in my personal experience, then it brings our physical bodies, and then each body system, emotional, mental, and then esoteric, spiritual, into vibrational balance. And so when you have that vibrational balance and your nervous system is grounded, then you can really start playing with, okay, so I'm seeing visions, or I'm hearing voices or tones, or whatever, or I see dead people, or I see disease in somebody's body. Like there's so many, there's this spectrum. And again, empathic would probably be the biggest, and then from there we're going to go into the claircognizant people.
Okay.
There's you just know, just know stuff. All of a sudden you're like, somebody's going to call, and they call, right?
Yeah.
That's going to be the next group. Then we've got the clairvoyants, okay? And then the clairaudience, and then mediumship is a specific genre of seeing dead human spirits specifically.
Okay.
And so once we understand that it's a spectrum and there's spokes on a wheel, and each of those is like a branch on a tree or spoke on a wheel, and you start to look at, okay, I just feel everybody's stuff and I get overwhelmed all the time. Well, how do you navigate that? You come down into your body, Okay, you learn to regulate your own nervous system. You get a handle on your GI system.
Okay, now
balancing the gut biome.
Right, and is that part of that is through diet? Is that what you're referencing,
Absolutely.
or are you talking more energetic here?
No, physical for sure.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's going to be things like intermittent fasting,
Okay.
colon hydrotherapy, drinking a lot of water, pre and probiotics. And so a lot of Western culture does not understand that how important physical, like the colon is and the GI system is in health. It's paramount. And so if we're looking at healing and we're looking at you wanting to be powerful in our psychic or intuitive abilities, being grounded and regulated in your own physical body is where we start, and then the systems can regulate, and then you're going to have an easier time accessing your own gifts.
Incredible.
And then we go into all like the super fun stuff of like, okay, which ear are you hearing? And is it a male or a female voice? And
Okay.
what, you know, those things like that.
Great, great. So do you hold workshops that
I
help
do.
people with their, okay,
I
that's
do.
good.
Yes.
Cool.
Hit me up.
Yeah, right, definitely. Okay, so I wanted to go back to, sort of the collective. And it's something that I talk about with my other guests, and just getting because I want hope for us. And yet there's so many people that feel very bleak about things.
Mm-hmm.
So you're there to help people, to guide people both as a paramedic as well as the intuitive healer that you are on many levels. So I don't know, just share your thoughts on where we're at and just some hope for people right now.
My thoughts on this period of time is that it's a huge invitation for us collectively and individually to integrate our shadow. And again, by shadow, what I'm talking about and meaning are those traumas and the fears and the shame and the things that we're not doing when people are looking, or like, what you're doing to cope. Pretty much everybody's got an addiction, even if it's just sugar or scrolling on your phone.
Chocolate. Yeah.
Right? And so how do we numb out? How do we distract, right? Starting to look at those elements within ourselves. And so it's been so collectively destabilized over the past couple of years that I honestly see this as a blessing. I see this as an exciting, and no, it's not comfortable. So don't mishear me and like, oh, she thinks it's great. No, it's definitely uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable to those of us who are ultra sensitive. Yes. Because it's literally like I've been being electrocuted for 2 years, and then I'll have to ask my guides, like, "Hey, tone it down a little bit."
And
ask for a barrier. It was so funny because I like one time at the beginning of 2020, it was like my fist was up to the sky, like, this is inhumane. I was so mad, and I audibly heard the voice. They always come in with such a succinct, like, just a 2 or 3 little sentence. They're like, ask for a barrier. I was like, oh, it's that easy.
Right.
So I did a meditation. I asked for a barrier, and that cut back like 60% of the stimulus for me. So, little pro tip there for you.
Oh,
Go
yeah,
ahead and do
absolutely. I mean, I think we have certain practices in yoga with that, which I know you also have a yoga practice as well. That's all part of this too. So yeah, right, charging the aura.
Absolutely.
And, yeah.
But collectively, we're being so destabilized. More and more people are being awakened or awakened. We'll say it that way. And I see that as a great thing. We're shifting out of a linear masculine ego, greed, power, lust, control, dark that we've been in for however many thousands of years. And now we're starting to shift, I heard in one of your interviews, into the age of Aquarius. Yeah. And more heart. Yeah. More, energetic, more holistic, and that's feminine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The feminine, and it's not. The qualities of feminine, right?
Oh yeah.
Is what we're saying about
masculine
that.
And feminine.
Yeah.
Energy.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, that's great. No, I like to hear, one, how you've been coping, and two, your hope for us. I mean, your vision as we move forward, and it really is fascinating to see people. You mentioned the 1.6 billion, I think, that have psychic. Is that the term
it's our
we're using?
Time. It
right,
is our
and that's
time
just
to
the
come
people
out.
that we know. That's just the people we know of that have been calculated. So it's true, and I think that the healing on multiple levels is, I think, so essential, and that's one of the things that you help people do. So you mentioned psychic surgery. Now, I don't know much about that. I have heard about that from a man named John of God down in Brazil. Do you know him?
Yes, and unfortunately, he kind of went out On a not so great. He was one of my favorites for a long time.
Oh,
but
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That whole.
I know some people that went down there. I heard good things from some that went and saw him. So anyway, we won't talk about what went wrong there. We're going to talk
Thank
about
you for all those years of service with that.
Right.
And then it's
Bye-bye.
just it's just another one of those.
It seems like, again, the masculine.
I was gonna say, yeah, I don't know how raw I can get on here, but anyway.
Oh, very.
Okay.
Very.
Psychic surgery, it makes sense with my paramedic background. So what psychic surgery is essentially energetic reconstruction of the grid template. Now, what that means is the quantum or subtle fields create matter, create the physical reality, okay? So physiologically, we have the cellular tissue that's just vibrating at certain ranges. And we have 7 primary organ systems that all have a vibrational range of health. Then we have our emotional body that also has a vibrational range of health, the mental body, and then we go out into the esoteric and expand outwardly. So people like me, when I do a passing glance on you, I can just see the auric field and the colors around. And don't worry, I'm not grid crashing you. Like if I'm at the grocery store, people are always like, "Oh my God, like is she checking me out? Like what does she see?" I'm not doing that when I'm off duty at all. And so when somebody comes to do a healing session, essentially when I touch, then I can clairvoyantly go into your field, into your cells, into your physical body. And it's essentially a reconstruction, and I go from the outer layers of the auric field and work all the way down into the cells where I can see where the traumas are stored, the memories are stored, those kinds of things. And it's almost like, for lack of a better way of saying it, it's almost like roto-rooting people, because there's so many people that don't understand that energetically, if the chakra systems want to be able to flow up and down, front to back, side to side, right? And the energy in all the hemispheres wants to be grounded and balanced in a normal state. Well, we're all human. We all have stuff. I don't know a person alive that's like fully flowing, because we all have been through life. And so if the energy is not flowing, then over time it begins to occlude or form a blockage. And so I can see where those blockages are and do corrective energetic surgery. Mind you, it's not physical. It is purely energetic to restore the energetic flow back into balance in all of those different body systems.
So what kind of feedback do you get from people? Is it quite immediate, or do they find that over time it integrates?
Yes, it's usually quite immediate. Most of the time people feel like, oh my gosh, like they feel like they lost 1,000 pounds.
Wow.
They'll feel like in their body for the first time in a long time. If they have a specific physical ailment, I get people that come for like really gnarly and pretty like acute, whether it's cancers or disease processes or really gnarly like medical presentation, whatever. There's always an energetic etiology or origin. Always. Always, always. Right. Yeah. And so I'm all about like, let's get to the root, man. Let's not suppress the symptoms. Let's go all the way down in there and figure out what it is and then bring everything back into balance. And then, because I really believe we're all our own greatest teachers and healers, it's just when we're in our own stuff, we can't see it. We don't know what to do. And so having somebody like me come in, clear you, ground you, get all the energy flowing, kind of lay it out like, okay, so you were heartbroken in college, and that, essentially started a process back in the heart chakra, and then over the years you've been coping by drinking like a bottle of wine every night or whatever, and then so we can just kind of piece it together that the person's like, oh, that's exactly it, right? And then hand them tools. Because again, really, as we understand it, I'm still very much a paramedic. I'm just more energetic now. It's like I'll come pull you out of the ditch, get you stabilized, get you grounded, get you cleared, and like sit with you in that darkness. And that to me is one of the most powerful moments, not only in my own healing process, but in the countless people that I've worked with, is just meeting somebody and validating their experience. Validating like, oh, I see what you're going through. This is heavy. Like just being there without needing to fix, change, do anything. And that soul can then get this like a little bit of energy, a little bit of spark back. And then I'll give you specific tools and homework and like read these books, do these meditations, these yoga postures, these supplements, these, and so people have a trail map then. And then so they'll come in and they'll leave, whether it's in person or I do most of my stuff online or over phone now. But you can literally see it's like they're 10 years younger, they're suddenly lighter, and they feel empowered because they're like, oh, okay, now I know what to do. Because that's the thing. Most people just don't know where to start. Or maybe they keep trying something and then they backslide into it. Or maybe they haven't really been ready to fully admit like what they're up to anesthetize. And there's no judgment in that, right? But as we are, this is the collective invitation, is to bring all of that stuff up, right? And work that stuff through within ourselves. And it's not, in the yoga community, it cracks me up because they're like, oh, just exhale and let it go. And I'm like, that's cool. You can exhale and let some stuff go, but you can't let go like core trauma issues. It doesn't just fall off. Like, wouldn't that be nice? Those need to be integrated. So there's a difference.
Okay.
Like, there are things that we can let go of are like addictions to meth or alcohol. If those we can measure a toxic relationship, we can let that go. What we need to integrate, fear, shame, like pain, sadness, all of those kinds of things. There's a huge difference. Once it integrates into our field, it actually becomes part of our power. It becomes part of our wisdom.
Very well said. Okay,
Thanks.
because I was going to, I'm tracking with you fully, and then when you said to integrate it, it's like, but we want it out.
No. Well, yes and no, but I know, like, it's just funny.
But
I just think that's cute in the spiritual community.
Oh yeah, no, it's great, but it's not as simple as it's not. I don't know. It's almost like it happened for a reason. I mean, that can be part of our power.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely.
So,
like, honestly, I would not take away anything that I've been through, as gnarly as it's been. I wouldn't wish it on anybody because I barely survived it. But every element where you are forced down essentially to your knees in surrender, in discomfort, where you hit that spot where you have to just face yourself, in those moments, those are some of the most powerful moments of healing and transformation, because it's what you do with that if you are able to stay heart open, if you are able to feel the discomfort, if you are able to just be like, this is just now, I'm not going to try to, that just is.
well, and not make victimhood be part of your story,
right.
Would be a long
It becomes
standing.
wisdom. Then it becomes wisdom, and it becomes actually part of your power. Your auric field integrates it so that your aspects of light and dark that we all have. So this love and light stuff, I love it, but you're literally just cutting off half of yourself and your power if you're just light chasing, right?
Right.
So understanding, remember, light and dark are two sides of the same coin. It's love. It's the current of love. It's just super high pitch vibration and super slow waveform, vibration. There's nothing to fear. It's just that we don't like the darkness as much because it's not comfortable. It doesn't look as good, right? But look at our world. There's some it's like tons of invitation, like darkness is everywhere. So it's so in our face right now. It's like, okay, instead of pushing it away out here or like looking at it out here, where is it in here? How do I sit with it in here and not judge it? And not try to push it away, and not try to heal it, and that's the key. Because if you can just sit with that energy and just allow it to be, then it loses its power. There's actual energetic hook in there. If you're pushing against something, it gets bigger.
Yeah.
So if you just, I'm not telling you got to like it, right? But if you can just meet it and feel it for just a second without trying to do anything, it'll unsnag the hook, and then it'll start to integrate. And that's how actual transformation and healing at the energetic level
Maybe
works.
like depersonalizing it in a way. So, I go back to victimhood.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to just see it for what it is and just detaching from the personal experience of it.
Yeah, that can help some people for sure. And we are really being called, you guys, right now. So as sensitives, and I went through this in my early stages, first I felt so victimized for so long, not only what had happened to me, which sucked. Like, truly, there was a lot of things in my childhood. They're like, whoa, okay, there's that. And then everything that I did to myself as a result of just trying to cope. There was all of that. Sliding into victimhood is one of those things that we really want to take a look at in our healing journey. So my understanding, especially in this timeline of the past couple of years, all of us sensitives are being called into our power now, whether we like it or not. And so I'm seeing people from all over, reaching out from all over the place going like, I don't know, like it's always kind of been there, but now it's like really coming out. Well, it's one of the very first ways, the biggest pivotal shifts and moments is when we say, okay, this is intense. I'm not going to play victim. Yeah, it's intense. It might not feel good, but I can do this. I can handle it. And when we take personal accountability and 100% responsibility for our entire lives, all of our actions, all of our behaviors, all of our energy, all of everything. And that's the thing that a lot of people just don't want to do, because if they don't do it and they play victim, then it's not their fault, but it just keeps them stuck.
Right.
And all of us, especially as sensitives, are like really being pushed, and a lot of our guides are coming in. I know it's my dharma. It makes sense to me now that I've been dealing with this for so long. It's been over 30 whatever years. And I was in the closet for 25, and then I've been very out and very publicly working with them now, and I bridge the mainstream with the energetic and holistic world. It's like making healing make sense, right? And it's our time to come out, to utilize our abilities, to like own your power in that, because you are going to be able to impact other people. Maybe it's animals, maybe it's planet, maybe it's collective. A lot of us have different roles and different specialties that we're able to, but it feels like it's time. And not playing victim is that's a key, like absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. Very well said. So you told some stories about when you were a paramedic and seeing some people right as they passed, and it was interesting to see to explain the distinction between a traumatic death versus
medical death.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I have had the honor, I see it as an honor, of being there probably between anywhere 20 to 30 like active deaths watching you die, and then hundreds of dead bodies in different capacities. Mm-hmm. And you have to understand that there's oftentimes soul fragments or something energetically that needs to be handled there this is on a 911 call as a paramedic. And initially I didn't want to have anything to do with it because I was still closeted, but I became the paramedic who was always there for death. I was always in that space of the extreme crises, and over time I began to notice a difference between a medical or an expected death, like in hospice, so an end-stage cancer or some played out disease process, right? Those guys would typically, the person depend, and understand, you guys, there's as many ways to die as there are to live. So there's not one set experience, but I did notice that there was kind of a symphony. There was kind of like things that were like similar between a lot of these. So the person that was in a hospice situation, you might often hear the reports there that they start to see dead people, or like their deceased loved ones coming in, or like their veil is being lifted, their field is starting to expand, it thins out. And then in the moments of death, this is really cool to see. So it starts at the base, and it's the energy in the chakra systems unfurl like a ribbon. And it is so cool to watch, and it can happen just lickety split, or it can kind of take a second depending on the person's, whatever they're experiencing in that. But it goes up, and this is the light at the end of the tunnel.
Okay.
That's what that is.
Yeah.
So you're going and you're making the ascension out the crown. Okay.
Wow.
In the medical death. And then the soul, so I'd be doing CPR and I'd watch the soul come out the top of the head. And in a medical death, 9 times out of 10, there was deceased relatives there to greet, or if the person had a specific religious archetype, be there to greet, or if they had pets that they just loved, be there to greet. Okay. So in the spirit realm, usually up here in the corner of the room somewhere, I would be watching the soul being met with that while we would, in like a DNR situation or hospice situation, we would just be called to confirm death. We wouldn't necessarily be called to, resuscitate it all. And then the person would transition, and that just means I'd see them disappear. So that's kind of the medical or the expected death. And it was really beautiful to witness. One thing that's important to note is the soul looks almost like, it's almost like a puff of smoke or energy initially when it comes out through the crown. And if somebody had a lot of life and vitality and they're really big, then it's going to be a lot bigger than somebody who's just like, oh God, get me out of here. Like they're just already dead in their body. And it's just like this little, very interesting to see.
Yeah.
And then, but ultimately everybody I would see would most everybody would transition. So in a traumatic death, this is very different. It's night and day. So traumatic death is like the insta-death. So we're going to do the car accidents, motorcycles down on the freeway, drive-by shootings, whatever, domestic violence. We got a lot of that. And so I see this all the time, and this is why one of my primary messages is not only to you, but to anybody who's watching or listening, is live your life now. None of us knows when we're going to die. And it is absolutely inevitable for every single one of us. There is nothing to fear in death. It is like taking off a heavy coat. That's it, okay? In a traumatic death, I can't tell you how many times I saw this. They got their plans for their day. They're rushing around. They're on their cell phone. They go through the Starbucks drive-through. They come out, boom, they get T-boned. That's it. It happens that fast every day, like thousands of times a day. And then we come in, and so we have to start extricating the body, whatever. So I would typically, in a traumatic death situation, the soul, which looks just like the person that's sitting in the crumpled car or dead, shot up in a drive-by, it looks like their physical body, but it's translucent. And they would literally be standing there looking at the body, then looking at me, and looking at the body, then looking at me, and they didn't understand, right? Because 1 second you're in your body and the next you're not. So in a traumatic situation, again, it's a little disorienting, but angels, 9 times out of 10, celestials would come on scene. Okay. And it would be so you think all the chaos and you think of the soul that's standing there trying to figure it out. And telepathically, those of us that are open to our abilities, it's almost like having like a lantern or so they can just tell that I could see them, right? And so I would start triage and working on the physical body and delegating what needed to be done there. But then I would also be looking at the soul like, you just died. This is what we're going to do. We're going to, blah, 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 blah. And that would kind of help them in those moments gain some sort of understanding. And then the angels would come in. And the angels were so cool because it would everything would get silent and slow. And then usually the soul that was out of the body would start to kind of turn because it felt like warm, like liquid amber honey. It was just, you're in the middle of this crazy whatever's happening, and all of a sudden just like this warm honey starts coming in. And so the soul would start to turn towards that, and then usually they would be enveloped and then disappear. And I saw that so many times.
Oh,
absolutely beautiful.
Absolutely incradible.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What an honor. It's an honor to see that.
Well, and that's a great way of looking at it because we do have so many, so much fear associated with death, but you're helping demystify it a lot.
Totally.
Just with this.
Just live your life. Eat the cake. Go on the vacation. Spend your money. Do it now.
Take workshops with Sarah K. Grace.
Reach out to me.
Follow your heart. And if you're called to learn more about this and all the different ways that Sarah can help you move through. I'm looking at a book right here, Holistic PTSD Recovery, written specifically for law enforcement, fellow paramedics, and things like that. You've got some workbooks, again, working with that, and personal power guidebooks. So this is really pretty. Sarah, you're doing great work, and I encourage everybody to find her over at sarahkgrace.com. And
Sarah with an H.
Sarah with an H, yes. I appreciate that. So much to know, and I'm sure you'll come back soon.
I would love to come back.
I hope we have a chance to work together because I'm fascinated. I
Let's
would
do
love
it.
to know. I'd love for you. I mean, I don't know if you're like looking at colors around me right now, but it's like. I wore red because I was like, maybe that's a good grounding color for something. If Sarah's going to look at colors in me, no, it's great. I don't mean to make light of this because it is really important. I think the big message here is truly healing on many, many levels. So I encourage everybody to please know that there is help and there's ways that we can move through challenges that we have on so many levels.
Yeah,
so
wherever you are in life right now is okay. Just breathe, and if you need, reach out to someone that can help you.
It's fantastic. Thank you again, and we really appreciate you joining us for Truth Be Told Transformation. Don't forget that Tony Sweet is on every Friday at 3 p.m. Pacific live on YouTube, and so that is Truth Be Told. And Robert Hensley also has a live show on Mondays at 3 p.m. I'm Bonnie Burkert. I'm here to talk to people that are really, I feel, doing amazing work out in the world, and because I, again, just transform. There's the opportunities always. So feel good, everyone. Until the next time, thanks for your follows, your likes, and your shares. Namaste.